بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. So today, inshallah ta'ala, we continue with our second class on the tremendous work Minhaj as-Salikin by Al-Imam as-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala. And by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the first class we discussed issues connected to the obligatory fast of Ramadan. And I'll say it like that just so we can understand how the book is laid out. The first particular issues that we discussed, if we remember last class, were pertaining to the obligatory fast of Ramadan. And perhaps we'll do a quick review. I don't feel right starting class without a review, just to make sure that we're not just sitting in class and allowing the information to leave us, because as we always mention, always emphasize, that's not the point of class. The point of class is to sit and to study and to retain the information. So we'll do a quick review so that we're able to cover the material that we want to cover today, inshallah ta'ala. What's the ruling on fasting? Anybody? Don't be shy. Please don't be shy. Don't be shy, right? Fasting is what? Obligatory, right? And if a person doesn't fast, are they still a Muslim? They still a Muslim? Alright. If a person doesn't fast, it's a sin, but they're still a what? Still a Muslim, right? They're still a Muslim. But fasting is obligatory. Fasting is obligatory. Who has to fast? What are the conditions for fasting? Muslim, intellect, baligh, right? What else? And that Muslim, baligh, aqil. One more thing. The ability, right? So a Muslim, right, that has what? Intellect, right? That's reached the age of Islamic adulthood, right? Reached the age of Islamic adulthood, and they have the what? Ability, right? That's what that ruling obligatory applies to. Right, because fasting is obligatory, but it's obligatory for the person who fulfills those conditions. How do we know when we start the month of Ramadan? Sighting of the moon, or what else? Completing 30 days of Sha'ban. What if it's cloudy? Complete the 30 days of Sha'ban. Now, when do we make the intention to fast? The night before, the night before. And that's for obligatory or voluntary? Obligatory fast or voluntary fast? Obligatory fast. I don't know if we discussed for a voluntary fast, and a person can make the intention during the day if they haven't done anything that would have nullified the fast. Right? So obligatory fast, the intention has to be made at night. Inshallah, we mentioned a point about the intention. As it relates to the intention, we mentioned that an action the night before can show your what? Intention, right? Such as taking out food to thaw out that you're going to cook for suhoor, right? Or running to the market to grab what you're going to eat for suhoor. All of those things, they indicate the what? Intention. Now, sickness. How many types of sicknesses are there? We discussed that, right? That's on this page. Huh? There we go, right? So as it relates to sicknesses, because a sick person, what's the ruling on a sick person? Do they have to fast or not? They don't have to fast. They can break their fast. But we discuss, right? Sickness has to be investigated and to find out which type of sickness it is. And as our brother said, there are two types of sicknesses. You want to elaborate? He elaborated. I think he elaborated already. One that's a person is expected to heal from, such as a common cold or whatever the case may be. Right, common cold, headache, whatever the case may be, they broke their fast. So that person breaks their fast, right? And what's the ruling for them rectifying that? What do? Do they make up the fast or feed a poor person? They make up the fast, because inshallah ta'ala they're going to do what? Recover. The other type of illness is what? Terminal or chronic, something like, we say, permanent, right? Where it's not expected for the person to do what? Recover, right? Nor fast. They don't have to fast, right? And it's not expected normally for that type of person to recover. Do they make up the fast, or do they feed a poor person? Feed a poor person. What's the reasoning behind that? Because in reality, there may not come a time in the future where they'll be able to fast to actually make the day up. All right. Likewise, we have the woman who is menstruating, the woman who is menstruating on postpartum or going through postpartum bleeding. She could be menstruating or going through what? Postpartum bleeding. What's the ruling on fasting for them? What's the ruling? We said fasting is obligatory. As it relates to them, what's the ruling for fasting? Haram. Impermissible. It's impermissible for the woman that's on her mens or going through postpartum bleeding to what? Fast. So not only is it incorrect, it wouldn't count. Likewise, she fell into sin because it's something that's what? Impermissible. Right? So what does she do? Does she make the day up or feed a poor person? Makes the day up, right? So she's not fasting or praying. Does she make the prayers up? No. Just the what? Fast. And that goes to show, it's been a theme for the discussions that we've been having throughout the month of Ramadan, just trying to highlight the ease of Islam. Right? So she makes up the fast because those number of days are what? Small. But as it relates to the salat, then the salat can be what? Plentiful. So if you look at the Sharia, when you examine, just a side note, when you examine the Sharia, you examine a hadith, and you examine the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll find ease wherever you look. Right? So the fasting, F1, the menstruating woman and the woman going through postpartum bleeding. Likewise, we have another scenario. We have the pregnant woman and the what? Breastfeeding woman. Right? We already went through this, right? But and again, this particular issue, you may read a number of opinions. You may read what? A number of opinions. But right now we're just discussing what we studied last class. So the pregnant woman or the breastfeeding woman, what's the ruling? How does she carry herself? A pregnant woman wakes up one morning, or a breastfeeding woman wakes up, right? Of course, before Fajr we're talking about, right? She's going to fast, or does she have to fast? Can she fast first and foremost? Can she fast? She can fast. If she wants to try to fast, if she's pregnant or breastfeeding, if she wants to try to fast, she can do what? Fast. That's number one. Right? So let's say that she's not feeling well. How do we examine the situation? It's your family member, your wife, sister, aunt, right? Niece, right? She says, I'm not feeling well. Right? She comes to you, she says, I know you went to some Ramadan classes. I know you did some of the things. I know you went to the Ramadan classes or whatever the case may be. I know, can you help me? What do we say to her? She says, I'm not feeling well. What do we say? All right, so she said you can't fast because you're sick. All right, what else? That's number one. All right, don't fast. So we say to her, don't fast. Anything else we need to say? That's the next question. Why? Right. So what is her answer going to be? Her answer is only going to be one of three things. Her answer is going to be one of three things. So she says, I can't fast. I don't feel well. What's the next question? Why don't you? What's the situation that you're not feeling well? So, as our brother mentioned, the first thing she says, I'm worried the baby's not moving as much as it normally does. I don't feel as many kicks as I used to feel. I don't feel comfortable with the fetus right now. I'm worried. I think I need to eat something in order to maintain the health of the fetus. All right. What's the ruling? So she breaks her fast. Now what? All right. So now we don't want to say fast. She has to do what? Make up the fast. Right. So she has to make up the fast and what? And feed a poor person. Right. And feed a poor person. What's the next scenario? She feels for herself. She says, I'm sick. The first scenario, or one day she says it was what? The fetus. The next day she says, you know what? It's what? It's me. Now I feel weak. Baby's kicking and everything, but I feel weak. So now she only makes up the day. Why is that? Because she's considered to be a what? Sick person. Alhamdulillah, yeah. Alhamdulillah, everybody remembers. Alhamdulillah. Third scenario is what? Both. I don't feel well, and I'm worried about the fetus. So she breaks the fast, and now what? Just make up the day, because the ruling goes with the mother. The ruling goes with the mother and not the what? The fetus. Or the breastfeeding baby. I keep saying fetus, but she could be worried about the what? The breastfeeding baby. Now, likewise, we discussed the elderly person. The elderly person, what's the ruling for the elderly person? Person who's elderly, 80s, 90s. Can't fast. Break the fast and do what? Feed a poor person. Elderly person breaks the fast and does what? Feeds a poor person. What are some of the things that break the fast? If the mints came on in the middle of the day, that would break the fast. What else? Eating. Right? That breaks the fast, right? Eating. What else? Drinking. What else? Throwing up intentionally. What else? Intercourse. And there were a couple other things that the scholars differ about, such as hijama, right? Such as hijama, getting cupped, right? And likewise, what can break the fast is an ejaculation that didn't come from intercourse, right? An ejaculation or a climax that didn't actually come from what? Intercourse, right? A person may have done something else in order to cause themselves to ejaculate. That nullifies the what? Fast. Question: which one of those things requires a penalty? Intercourse, right? Intercourse requires for a person to pay a penalty or a kafara. What's the kafara? What's the free a slave first, right? Can't free a slave, then 60 days. We agree with that or disagree? Agree with 60 days or disagree? 2 months. 2 months. What's the difference between 2 months and 60 days? It could be, it's three, if you say 2 months, it's three scenarios. What are they?
Well, you got 29,
58, 59, or 30 and 30, 60. Right? No, not 31, because it's Islamic calendar is either only 29 or 30. And that's another thing that's important. That when we're talking about anything that's connected to the Sharia, we're talking about the what? Hijri calendar. Anything that's talking about the Sharia is talking about the Islamic what? Calendar. So that penalty, we say shahraini mutatabi'ain, that word shahraini is being used for, it's not saying 60 days. Because those 2 months, like we said, it could be three scenarios: 58, 29, 29, 59, 30, 29, or 60, 30, 30. Right? So that's the penalty. That's the penalty. Person who eats and drinks forgetfully. They eat and drink forgetfully. So the first day, especially the first day of Ramadan, second day of Ramadan, seriously, the first day, you can make that mistake because you didn't get rolling yet. So you eat something forgetfully and you say, Subhanallah, I'm fasting. Continue to fast or scratch that day, continue to fast. Right? Continue to fast and that day what? That day counts. What's the etiquette of breaking the fast? Some of the etiquettes of breaking the fast. Or just one. I think we want to discuss one. Discuss a couple. What's some of the etiquettes of breaking the fast? Hasten to break the fast. Right? What else? Make dua. What else? Dates. What kind of dates? Ajwa. If you can find fresh dates, then what? Fresh dates. Right? The moist dates. Can't find moist dates, then what? Dry dates. No dry dates, then what? Water. Nah. No dry dates. And nothing then? Not air. Not air. What if you don't have anything, though? What if you really don't have anything? Huh? What if you don't have anything? I already told y'all the story about the brother that said eat grass. Seriously, it's a story. Brother said, just eat some grass. Said that. He was serious. Yeah, he was serious, but, what do you do if it's nothing available? Your truck driver, for example. Truck driver on the road, on the stretch, where there's nothing what? Nothing there. SubhanAllah, I thought I had some dates. SubhanAllah, I thought I had some water. You turn around, there's nothing on this journey. You're a truck driver, so you're rolling on the highway, middle of nowhere. What you do? Make the intention to break the fast, right? Innamal a'malu binniyat, right? Indeed, and the actions are judged by intent. Everyone will have what they intend, right? So you make the intention to do what? Break the fast. You have another option. What's the other option? What's the other option? You have another option. Al-wisal. Right? You just continue to fast throughout the what? Until you get to something, because that's permissible. But you have to stop before what? Fajr. Nah. You have to stop before Fajr. Nah. Etiquettes of suhoor. What are some of the etiquettes of suhoor? Delaying it till close to the Fajr. What's the wisdom behind that? Be opposite of Ahlul Kitab. That'll work. Nah, what else? Not being hasty. Nah, what else? Allahu Akbar. That's the number one reason. Nah, what else? What's the wisdom behind delaying suhoor? That's what I'm saying. What's the wisdom behind the delay? Allahu Akbar. We can say it like that to try to maximize the nutrition that comes from the food. Right? Because say you eat at 12 o'clock, middle of the night, and you go to sleep. Right? You kind of like slept it off. But if you eat close to Fajr, it's closer to the time that you begin to do what? Fast. Right? So it's one of the wisdoms of delaying suhoor. What's the purpose behind fasting? We discussed a hadith, a very important hadith. What's taqwa? Right? Not that you leave off food and drink. Leaving off food and drink is a what? Means, but the goal is what? Taqwa. Right? Being a Muslim who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it doesn't benefit. It's not fruitful for a person to fast all day and to be hungry and thirsty, but they carry out all types of atrocities throughout the day and night, throughout the day. Right? And we discussed, we didn't discuss that here. There's two types of fast, right? Keep a note with this. We discussed this in class at Masjid bin Baz. Maybe we discussed it here. Two types of fast. A fast that's connected to time and a fast that's permanent and forever. Or continuous. Let me not say forever. Right? Continuous. All day, every day. Every day of the week, all year long. Right? So it's two types of fast. Fasts that are connected to time, a time frame, like we're fasting right now from sun up to sundown. And there's another type of fast that is continuous. It's continuous and it doesn't stop. All day, every week, every month. What fast is that? Huh? Avoiding prohibitions. Because the meaning of fasting, what's the meaning of fasting linguistically? Al-imsak, to do what? Refrain. So we refrain from food and drink. That's the kind of a temporary fast. I'm just using that term loosely. Meaning that's connected to what? Time. But there's a permanent type of refrain. Is that a word? Refrain? Permanent. It's a permanent type of refraining. Right? And it's refraining from what? Sins. So we have a fast that's obligatory all the time. That's fasting from disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So when we, just to drive the point home, when the sun goes down, we're still fasting. When the sun goes down, When the sun goes down, we're still what? Still fasting. We're still going to fast. Fast from food and drink? No. But we're going to fast from what? Disobedience. We have to refrain from what? Disobedience. All day, every day. That fast does not stop. And the fast that's connected to time is an aid for the fast that's continuous. The fast that's connected to time, right, is an aid and a help for the fast that's continuous. Right, so leaving off food and drink, it helps you in that continuous fast, which is to leave off what? Disobedience. The point that I'm making is that that's the purpose of fasting. The purpose of fasting is to become a good what? A good Muslim. Now, we have one more issue, and then we'll move on to the rest of the chapter. We have one more issue, which was if a person passes away and they owe a fast. A person passes away and they owe a fast. Right? And we discussed the issue. Let's see if we can rehash it. A person is ill. Right? A person is ill and they did not fast. Ill and they did not fast. They pass away. Rahimahullah. Rahimahullah. She passes away. Or he passes away. Right? And they're ill. They didn't fast that day. They're ill. Does that fast have to be made up for them? The fast is made up for them. You sure? Remember how we discussed the issue. Why not? No. We're talking about someone making it up on their behalf. Did I say that? I mean on their behalf. Right? Not on the sickness. Not on the sickness, right? Nah. Almost. Think about. Let me give you two scenarios. Let me give you both scenarios. Inshallah, it'll become clear like that. There we go. He's on point. Alhamdulillah. Right. So, say for example, the person was ill. They're ill and they pass away. They passed away where they were what? Ill. It never came a point in time where they actually had to do what? Make the fast up. Because they were still in a state of being what? Ill. Second scenario, the person is ill. Right? They recover. Now they need to do what? Make the fast up. They prolong the situation for whatever reason. They prolong making the day up and then they pass away. Now someone does what? Makes it up on their behalf. So in that scenario, you look at if the person recovered or not. As it relates to the rest of the chapter, inshallah ta'ala. Al-Imam Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, all of the issues that we just discussed right now are connected to the obligatory fast of Ramadan. Now Al-Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, he's going to discuss some of the voluntary fasts, right? Because after fasting the month of Ramadan, inshallah, it's an encouragement to fast throughout the what? Year. Those days that come up that we can fast, those voluntary fasts. So he mentioned Su'ila an Sawmi Yomi Arafah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked about fasting on the day of Arafah, which is which day? The 9th of what? Dhul Hijjah. Right, the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. Right, write that down. It's the day of Arafah, the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. So Su'ila an Sawm Yom Dhul Hijjah, or Yom Arafah. He was asked about fasting on the day of Arafah. And fasting on the day of Arafah, we know is if someone makes Hajj, we know it's for the person who is not making Hajj. As for the person who's making Hajj, they don't fast on the day of Arafah. Why not? Am I made Hajj? Am I made Hajj? Raise your hand, you made Hajj. Alhamdulillah. Why didn't we fast on the day of Hajj, day of Arafah? People were fasting, huh? Make a dua. The wisdom behind that is to eat so that you can stand and have energy to make what? Dua. Right, for Arafah. Right, but the person who's not on Arafah, those are the people who do what? Fast. Those are the people who fast. فَقَالَ يُكَفِّرُ. What's the reward for it? يُكَفِّرُ السَّنَةَ الْمَاضِيَةَ وَالْبَاقِيَةَ. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it expiates the sins of the past year and the coming. That it expiates the fast of the past year and the coming year. And no doubt it's a benefit. No doubt that's a benefit. وَسُئِلَ عَنْ. So that's the first voluntary fast. Right? So we know the voluntary fast of, the obligatory fast of Ramadan. Now the first voluntary fast we have is the day of what? Arafah. Right? وَسُئِلَ عَنْ Siyam Ashura. And he was fasting about fasting on the day of Ashura, which is when? 10th of Muharram. The 10th of Muharram. That's the next voluntary fast. The 10th of Muharram. فَقَالَ يُكَفِّرُ السَّنَةَ الْمَاضِيَةَ. It expiates the sins or wipes away the sins from the previous year. وَسُئِلَ عَنْ صَوْمِ يَوْمِ الْإِثْنَيْنِ. وَسُئِلَ عَنْ صَوْمِ يَوْمِ الْإِثْنَيْنِ. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked about fasting on Mondays. قَالَ ذَاكَ يَوْمٌ وُلِدْتُ فِيهِ وَبُعِثْتُ فِيهِ أَوْ أُنْزِلَ عَلَيَّ فِيهِ. That's the day I was born. That's the day that I was sent as a messenger. Or he said that's the day I received revelation. Meaning that we fast on the day on Monday. We fast on Monday. So that's the what? Which voluntary fast is that? Third. Number 1 is what? Arafah. Number 2, Ashura. And number 3, Al-Ithnain, Monday. Qala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I don't know if we mentioned this particular point about this book, Minhaj al-Salikin. And beginning of Minhaj al-Salikin, Al-Imam Sa'di, he mentions, rahimahullah, that sometimes he doesn't even mention his speech. He just mentions a hadith as the text of the book. You with me? Sometimes he doesn't mention any of his speech, but if the issue is clear, he said, I just put the hadith in the book. So this is one of those situations where he just mentions hadith after hadith after hadith, and they're mentioning the issues. But in reality, if you ponder, the hadith is an issue. So he mentioned the hadith without mentioning anything from himself, but he covered 3 issues, 3 voluntary fasts. So he covered the clear issue of fasting on Arafah, fasting Muharram, and fasting on Mondays. Right? Without mentioning anything from himself, he just mentioned what the issue, because the issue is abundantly clear. The next issue, وَقَالَ مَنْ صَامَ رَمَضَانَ ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَهُ سِتًّا مِنْ شَوَّالٍ كَانَ كَصِيَامِ الدَّهْرِ. رواه Muslim. We had a hadith of Al-Imam Sa'di, he mentioned the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Alright, so Al-Muhim is we got the math. Everybody got the math? Whoever fasts month of Ramadan plus 6 days from Shawwal, as if they fasted the whole year, that's because days are multiplied by how many? 10. Up until what? 700. And again, just what determines the fluctuate? What determines the increase in reward? Whether it's 10 or 700. The level of what? The level of sincerity and remembrance and adherence to the sunnah. Right? Adherence to the sunnah. So what determines whether a deed is going to be multiplied by 10 up into 700, right? Was the number that's determined by the level of sincerity and, right, adherence to the sunnah. وقال أبو ذر أمرنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن نصوم من الشهر 3 أيام 13 و14 و15 رواه النسائي والترمذي. Now, that hadith was authenticated by Al-Imam Al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded us to fast 3 days out of the month, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded us to fast 3 days out of the month, the 13th, the 14th, and the what? 15th. And that's talking about the Islamic calendar, the 13th, 14th, and 15th of the Islamic month that we're in. Not this month, but you know what I mean, that we would be in. So what number is that? That's number what? What voluntary fast? I got 5. That's 5 or 6? 5? It's 5? What's number 1? Arafah. What's number 2? Ashura. Number 3? Mondays. Number 4? Shawwal. Number 5? 13, 14, 15. Put a line. Next topic at hand is fasts that are prohibited. Fasts that are prohibited. وَنَهَى عَنْ صِيَامِ يَوْمَيْنِ. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbade fasting on 2 days. يوم الفطر ويوم النحر. Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. It's not permissible to fast on either Eid. It's not permissible to fast on either Eid. Cannot fast on Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha. It's not permissible to fast on either one of those days. And the hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. وقال أيام التشريك أيام أكل وشرب وذكر الله عز وجل. And likewise the أيام التشريك. The أيام التشريك are when? Not first. You mean the 11th? 11th? What 11th? What else? And 13th. The 11th, 12th, and 13th. Because on Yom al-Nahr you do what? Slaughter. The 10th. Yom al-Nahr you do what? Slaughter. And then people are giving away the what? The meat. So on Ayyam al-Tashriq is not permissible to fast. And thus the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th of which month? Dhul Hijjah. Right? Dhul Hijjah. The month of Hajj. Now, so how many prohibited fasts are there right there? How many did we discuss? I got 3. Eid al-Fitr, that's 1. Eid al-Adha, 2. And Ayyam al-Tashriq. Those are impermissible fasts. Number 4. وقال لا يصومن أحدكم يوم الجمعة إلا أن يصوم يوما قبله أو يوما بعده متفق عليه. And let none of you fast. Let none of you fast the day of Jum'ah. The day of Jum'ah. Because Jum'ah in reality is a what? Eid. Right? In reality, Jum'ah is a Eid. So no fasting on Jum'ah by itself. إلا أن يصوم يوما قبله أو بعده. Unless you fast the day before or after. Unless you fast the day before or after. Pay attention to these next hadith, inshallah. Please pay attention to these next hadith, inshallah. Pay attention to them. They show, if we ponder these 3 hadiths back to back to back, they show the tremendous or the vast opportunity there is to earn the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the month of Ramadan. Right, I'm going to read them, and then you show me or someone highlight for us where that opportunity is, where we see the vast opportunity for the forgiveness of sins. Hadith number 1. وقال من صام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whoever fasts, underline fast, the month of Ramadan, right, out of faith, sincerely for Allah, not showing off, واحتسابا, seeking to earn the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Then his previous sins will be forgiven. Next hadith. Al-Imam Sa'di, he mentions the hadith, or he brings the hadith in his book, Minhaj al-Salikin. وَمَنْ قَامَ رَمَضَانَ إِيمَانًا وَاحْتِسَابًا غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Whoever stands the month of Ramadan. And Sheikh Fawzan mentions right here, stands means every day. Right, this hadith, the proper understanding of this hadith, whoever's min qama Ramadan, whoever stood up for prayer every night. But that doesn't mean that you stood up for every night for 11, long as you stood. You stood for 3 every night, the hadith applies to you. You stood what? Every night. Right? So the key is all of the days, not the number of what? Units. Right? And we know that we've discussed a hadith that highlight that talk about the what? The virtue of what? Consistency. The virtue of consistency. You pray 3 every night. For all of Ramadan, the hadith applies to you. من قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whoever stands the month of Ramadan, right? Whoever stands the month of Ramadan out of faith and seeking the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then his sins, previous sins will be forgiven. Underline the sentence stands for Ramadan. What did we just underline first? Fast. Underline right here what? Stands. Right? وَمِنْ قَامَ لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ. Next hadith. مِنْ قَامَ لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ إِيمَانًا وَاحْتِسَابًا غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِ. And whoever stands on Laylatul Qadr, out of true faith, imanan, wahtisaban, seeking the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then his previous sins will be forgiven. Underline stands Laylatul Qadr. Someone highlight to me the vast opportunity for forgiveness that we see if we look at all 3 of these hadith. How can you not be forgiven during the month of Ramadan? Right, look at the opportunities, right? Whoever fasts, a person may not have stood every night, but did you fast 30 days? Did 29, 30 days you fast? Okay, it's a hadith for you. Person might have missed a day of fasting, right? Did you stand 29 or 30 days? It's a hadith for you. Person might have missed all of that. Person might have missed all. Might have missed an abundance of fasting, right? It might have missed an abundance of standing. It's the last 10 days. What's left for you? Laylatul Qadr. So how can a person not be forgiven during the month of Ramadan? Right? So we ponder those 3 hadith. We see the vast opportunity. وَكَانَ يَعْتَقِفُ. Al-Imam Masjid, he mentions وَكَانَ يَعْتَقِفُ الْعَشْرَ الْأَوَاخِرِ من رمضان حتى توفاه الله واعتكف من بعده أزواجه. He mentions the hadith of the Messenger of Allah. I believe it's a hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha. Hadith Aisha radiallahu anha, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to make i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. He used to make i'tikaf during the last 10 days of Ramadan until he passed away, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then after that, his wives made i'tikaf. And after that, his wives made i'tikaf, meaning that it was legislation. So the women, they made i'tikaf as well. We want to focus on this particular point for the topic for the end of class, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make what? I'tikaf, right? Used to make i'tikaf. I want to look at some points as it relates to i'tikaf, right? Number 1, an encouragement to perform i'tikaf. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, or we'll say Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah, he mentions in his book Mukhtasar Zad al-Ma'ad. I think we talked about Zad al-Ma'ad is a book by who? Ibn Qayyim. But Sheikh al-Islam al-Mujaddid al-Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, he made a summary of it. It's called Mukhtasar Zad al-Ma'ad. It's the purple one that's translated. It says provisions for the what? Hereafter. Right? So Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, he mentions that, but remember, it's a summary of Ibn Qayyim's speech. So he mentions Allah the Most High legislated i'tikaf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he legislated i'tikaf. So we know i'tikaf is something that's legislated, rather it's recommended. And its objectives. What are the i'tikaf? If someone might not know Arabic, i'tikaf means the meaning of that seclusion in the masjid. I'tikaf meaning the last 10 days the person secludes themselves where? In the masjid. They come and they do what? Sit in the masjid with the intention of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's called al-i'tikaf. So al-i'tikaf is recommended, right? Its objectives and cores. What are the objectives and cores of al-i'tikaf? They're focusing on the objective and cores of i'tikaf are focusing the heart on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, as I mentioned to the brothers, I've been mentioning it all week long. As I mentioned to the brothers, we live in a society where your heart can start going all different types of places, meaning you're busy. Right? Most of us in here are very, very busy. If you're not doing this, you're doing that. If you're not doing that, you're doing this. And we become very busy with this world. Running here and running there. Running everywhere. I'tikaf is a time to stop and to focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's from the objectives of i'tikaf. Likewise, from the objectives of i'tikaf is separating oneself from the creation. Because being amongst the creation could be harmful. If we ponder, the legislation during Ramadan, we separate ourselves from what? Food and drink, which too much of it can be what? Harmful. So we separate ourselves from food and drink. Likewise, during the month of Ramadan, we separate ourselves. I'tikaf is an opportunity to separate yourself from the creation, because mixing with the creation, likewise, could be what? Harmful. Sometimes. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You could be sitting with a group of people and they're backbiting. That's harmful. And if you don't get up, that's harmful. If you don't get up and move, that's harmful. You could be sitting around with a bunch of people discussing things that no one should be discussing. It's harmful. Sometimes you need to cut yourself off from the creation. We need to cut ourselves off from the creation. And the way to do that is what? I'tikaf. Right? To rectify your heart from that. Likewise, from the objectives of i'tikaf is busying oneself with the obedience of Allah. Busying oneself with the obedience of Allah. That a person comes to the masjid, right? They come with their Quran, they come with their book of hadith, they come with the fortress of the Muslims so they can read their supplications, and they come and they busy themselves with the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They cut themselves off from everyone and they come and busy themselves with the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the part I want everyone to remember. Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, he mentions that, so the servant draws close to Allah instead of being occupied with the creation, because that's what happens to us. We get occupied with the creation. It doesn't matter if it's your wife. You can get occupied with your wife. You get occupied with your children. You get occupied with, with your brothers and with your sisters. You get occupied with the creation. It happens. That's just life. Right? So a person takes that time to draw close to Allah instead of being occupied with the creation. Right? And as a result, this is a sentence I want everyone to remember. As a result, the solitude of al-i'tikaf prepares him for the loneliness of the grave. Because you come to be by yourself. For i'tikaf, you come and you separate yourself from the creation and you go sit alone somewhere and busy yourself with the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, that should bring to mind the loneliness and the solitude that you're going to experience in the grave. Because sometimes that can escape us. We're around a bunch of people all the time. No one's going to be around us in the grave. We're going to be alone. We're going to be alone, so we need to prepare for that loneliness. And i'tikaf is one of the ways to prepare for that loneliness. Some points about i'tikaf, some rulings connected to a person may say, subhanAllah, I need to do i'tikaf. After hearing the speech of Ibn al-Qayyim and the benefits of i'tikaf, I might need to do i'tikaf. I think I'm going to do i'tikaf. Some of the rulings connected to i'tikaf. Number one is that i'tikaf is a recommended act of worship. Right? I'tikaf is a recommended act of worship by scholarly consensus. Person will say, what's your proof that it's recommended? By scholarly consensus. Likewise, the hadith that we mentioned, the hadith of Aisha, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do so in the last 10 days. Point number two is that a woman cannot, we know that they can, but they cannot make i'tikaf without the permission of her husband. A woman cannot make i'tikaf without the permission of her husband. Number three, al-i'tikaf requires the intention to perform that specific act of worship. Because al-i'tikaf simply means to remain in the masjid. Or to remain, i'tikaf linguistically means to remain in a place. But in order to make it worship, you have to have the intention, just like you have to have the intention for everything else. Perhaps we can make it clear with the ghusl. A ghusl, you put water all over your what? Your body. That doesn't mean that you're making a what? A ghusl. I mean, you could get what? You go to a shower and you get water all over your body. That doesn't necessitate that you're making a ghusl until you do what? Make the what? Intention. Likewise, you can walk in the masjid and stay in the masjid for 5 hours, but you never made the intention for what? I'tikaf. Right? So the mere being in the masjid, you have to make the intention for what? I'tikaf. Number four, al-i'tikaf must be performed in the masjid where the congregational prayer is established. Al-i'tikaf has. Now, why is that? Why does the i'tikaf have to be performed in the masjid where congregational prayer is established? What's the wisdom behind that? It's the rationale behind that. Because the i'tikaf, the purpose is to do what? Remain where? In the masjid. If the congregational prayer isn't established in that masjid, then the person's going to have to go and come in abundance, right? And the goal is to sit still. Now, point number 5, the one making i'tikaf should not exit the masjid unless it is necessary to go and use the bathroom, to go and take a shower, to go and get some food if nobody can bring it to them, and things of that nature. Something that's important, especially for us. I'tikaf can be made in increments because some person may have a job. True or false? True. Right? So you can make an i'tikaf at night, but when the morning comes, you don't have enough time to take off for 10 days in a row. Right? You're just not able to. So you make an i'tikaf at night, right? You just go ahead and do what? Go to work. Right? I'tikaf doesn't have to be for 10 days straight is what I'm trying to say. You with me? I'tikaf can be in what? Increments. Say, for example, you make your i'tikaf on Sunday night. Right, you make your i'tikaf all the way up until Fajr Monday morning. Monday morning you go to work, right? But that's going to break your i'tikaf. But you made i'tikaf for that increment. That's considered what? I'tikaf, right? So you go to work, then you come back after work and you start a new what? I'tikaf. I don't want a person to understand that they have to be there 10 days straight and say, well, I can't do that. I'm not able to do that. And they lose out on the opportunity to make what? I'tikaf. I'tikaf can be for increments in hours, if I say it like that. Now, you about to say something? No limited amount of time. Long as you make the intention, this is i'tikaf for me. I'm going to sit here and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the intention of what? I'tikaf. It's i'tikaf, even if it's an hour or two. Now, for that situation, you need to renew your intention. Because leaving out to go to work, you're breaking the what? I'tikaf. So, but you come back that next and make a new intention for that next what? Night. Point being is that i'tikaf can be made in what? Increments. Don't lose out on the opportunity just because you can't make your i'tikaf the whole 10 nights of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. That's what I'm trying to say. Do what you can. Right? Do what? Do what you can. It's recommended that the one performing the i'tikaf busies oneself with worship. If a person is making an i'tikaf, you shouldn't just sit in the masjid just to sit there, but you should busy yourself with what? With worship. Busy yourself with worship, right? Prayer, reading the Quran, and supplicating. Number 8, it is number 7, I think. Number 7, it is recommended that the one making the i'tikaf leaves off affairs that do not concern him or her. Because maybe other people making an i'tikaf, they may be having a conversation, doesn't concern you, then do what? Leave it off, right? Leave it off. Person who's making i'tikaf leaves off affairs that does not concern him or her. But you know what that could be applied to even more? Right? The cell phone. Reality. You're making an i'tikaf, there's no need to get on the cell phone and start busying yourself with stuff that doesn't even really what? Concern you, right? Put it away for a minute. Leave it in the car. Do whatever you need to do, right? But making an i'tikaf, busy yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 9, it's permissible for your wife to come visit. If you make an i'tikaf, your wife can come and what? Visit, come to the door right there, talk to your wife for a little bit. She see how you doing, right? Likewise, with a condition, as long as he doesn't become aroused, right? Long as that while a person is in the i'tikaf, it's not from al-i'tikaf for a person to become what? Aroused, right? So if you can see your wife and just going to be a plain little hey, how you doing? Then that's cool. But for reasons other than that, then no. Number 9, it's permissible for one making an i'tikaf to hold conversation. You don't have to be completely quiet while you're making an i'tikaf. If your brother is there and you want to hold a permissible conversation, then it's okay to hold a permissible conversation. You don't have to remain absolutely quiet in an i'tikaf, but conversations can be held. It's not permissible for the one, last point, it's not permissible for the one making an i'tikaf or other than him or her, meaning other than the person that's making an i'tikaf, to buy and sell in the masjid. To buy and sell in them, because the person may spend a large amount of time in the masjid, so they try to take care of their business. Why? Because they, it's a good amount of time in the masjid. They may have some things going on in the world, so they go to try to take care of it while they're in the what? Masjid. Right? It's not permissible to perform business transactions in the masjid, and additionally, the transaction is invalid. The transaction is invalid. What's meant by is invalid, meaning the transaction is as if it didn't take place. As if it didn't what? Take place. Whatever you sold, the person doesn't own it, nor do you own the money that they gave you. Legislatively. Even if it's there what? Physically. Right? The deal is what? Is invalid. The deal is what? Invalid. And the rulings that are connected to that transaction would not be connected to it. But inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk about that if we ever study the chapter of buying and selling. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop there. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.